A first-round possibility that no one is talking about for the New Orleans Saints. More proof that New Orleans is still a free agent destination. But first, draft insider Trey Wingo joins the show to talk about what the Saints should do at 16 and 19 in the first round. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Saints, your daily podcast covering the New Orleans Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks as always for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget that we are free and available on all platforms, including on YouTube as well. And I'm your host, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter. You can find me over at USA Today's Saints Wire, Tuesdays on Locked On NFL, and here with you every single Monday through Friday on Locked On Saints. And today I am not alone. I am very excited to welcome in Pro Football Network and Caesars Trey Wingo. Of course, you can catch him and Tony Pauline over on the Draft Insiders podcast. And of course, Trey's fantastic podcast, Half Forgotten History. So make sure you go and check out those shows as well. But we're going to talk here in just a second about what the Saints should do at 16 and 19, the positions that they can target, the quarterback question, everything. So we're going to get down to all of those details here for you with Trey Wingo joining the show. Trey, thanks so much for joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Saints. Let's just get right to it. What are the Saints thinking here with the move to have the 2 first-round picks, 16 and 19?
Well, I talked to Dennis Allen. I ran into him over the weekend at the Final Four, and I said, "Hey, what are you thinking here with this trade?" He goes, "Well, we have 3 picks in the top 50." So it gives them a lot of flexibility. And it's kind of a weird draft if you think about it, Ross. We now have 8 teams that hold multiple first-round draft picks. If this holds, and if all 8 teams use those multiple draft picks, that would be a record. The most I think we ever had before was 6 teams with multiple first-round picks. I think that was back in 2004. So we are talking about something that would be unprecedented if we do see it executed here on draft night on a couple Thursdays from now. Yeah. But I think they have some ideas. Obviously, pass receiver would be one of them, but you can't rule out the idea of long-term quarterback situation. I mean, Jameis is back, and he played really well for them up until he got hurt in that win over the Bucs. But you don't know if that's a long-term solution or a long-term or a short-term solution at this point.
Yeah, so it doesn't feel like it's entirely a, let's say, evaluation of Jameis, right? When you and I talked at the Super Bowl in Los Angeles, we talked a bit about, hey, Jameis being back would make a ton of sense. That could still very well be the case. Sure. This might not be a situation to where we think this quarterback is better than Jameis Winston, but there's no guarantee that Jameis is there next year with an out in his contract, right? So getting a rookie contract on a quarterback, NFL teams love doing that. And in this year's draft class, you're seeing, and really the past few draft classes, you're seeing these wide receivers come in and immediately impact their NFL teams. Is there a wide receiver that you've heard about or one that you feel would be a good fit for the Saints they could target at 16 or 19?
Well, the question is whether or not the kid out of Alabama is going to be there after tearing his ACL. I think we talked about it on our Draft Insider show with Tony Pauline earlier this week. I think he's 10 weeks out from surgery and he's ahead of schedule, but we're still looking at 5 to 7 months. Adrian Peterson ruined ACL recoveries for everybody. He tore his knee up on Christmas Eve that year, and then the next year was in 9 yards of setting the single-season rushing record. Right. So when you compare everybody to that scale, it's never going to be good enough. But we have seen an accelerated timeline historically over the last 10 years in coming back from ACL injuries. So I think he would be fascinating because if he was healthy, there's no way he would be there at 16. Yeah. But it's such a deep wide receiver draft class. And I don't think that's going to change, by the way. I think this is going to be a recurring theme going forward because of the way the college game is played and, quite frankly, the way the NFL game is now refereed and adjudicated. You're going to see more and more wide receivers being able to step in and be NFL ready than we ever have before. My God, just take it the last 2 rookie wide receivers out of LSU, Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, immediate massive impact.
Yeah, and Kayshon Boutte right around the corner for probably next year's draft, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So as we look at the offensive tackle possibility for the New Orleans Saints in the first round, you and Tony were also talking on the Draft Insiders podcast about a a run on offensive tackles, or not necessarily a run on offensive tackles, but offensive tackle being a popular target early on in the draft. For the Saints to land a tackle, if that's one of the places that they want to go at 16 or 19, does it feel like they might have to move up with at least one of those picks in order to make that happen?
It's interesting. The offensive line thing is sort of it's always a very difficult grade because, like, for example, I heard all along a few years ago that Tristan Wirfs, he did all this stuff out of Iowa, great athletic guy, wasn't a finisher. Well, then look what he does his first 2 years in the NFL. He finished a lot of defensive tackles and a lot of defensive ends. I mean, he was phenomenal. So, Garrett Bowles was such a bust for a while coming out of the draft in 2017 and then really turned his career around the last couple of years in Denver. I don't know if they'll have to move up. The question is, will they get the right one? I mean, like we talk about these wide receivers, right? I can tell you before the start of the 2020 first round, the wide receiver that was moving up boards faster than anyone was Jalen Reagor, the kid out of TCU whose dad played for the Colts as a defensive end. And then obviously that has been nothing short of a disaster for the Philadelphia Eagles. So this run up to the draft, I always say this, I'd love to have two drafts. One right when the season ended, and then one where we normally have it, just to see how disparate and how different those two drafts would be. And sometimes you get fooled by all the stuff and all the junk and all the, what about, and I don't know about this. There's one or two that really work out and goes for them well in that process. But for the most part, these guys get elevated sometimes for reasons that don't really make a lot of sense. I would say to people, just trust your gut. Like the Malik Willis kid out of Liberty, the quarterback. Everyone I heard people, professionals that I believe in and trust, tweeting, "Oh, somebody's going to fall in love with him with his pro day." And I'm like, why? He's throwing against air with nobody trying to take his head off. Like if you fall in love with a kid because of a 64-year, like Zach Wilson last year. Oh my God, look at that throwing his pro day. Didn't really help him his rookie year, right? Didn't really help. And the same thing has happened with Malik Willis. I would say that to all evaluators, stop that now, okay? Yeah. Trust your game tape. And I'm not saying Malik Willis can't be good. I'm just saying evaluate whether he's going to be good or bad based on the game tape, not on a one throw from 64 yards. I'm old enough to remember Jamarcus Russell having a pro day where he threw one 60 yards from his knees and people were freaking out. I'm like, when does anybody throw from their knees in an NFL game? Like this whole draft industrial complex that I've been a large part of for a lot of years, I get it. But the pro day stuff drives me nuts, man. Trust the tape.
Of course, you're fresh off the plane, coming back from New Orleans.
Literally.
Now. Because you had a couple. You had a whole.
It took
maybe
a
a
while.
couple of plays there.
It
took you a second. Yeah. So now, if I were to say the Saints have four big needs, right? Quarterback, wide receiver, offensive tackle, and safety. With three top 50 picks, where amongst those four picks are they most likely to be able to maybe find quality starters? Can they do it at any of those, like any three of those four positions, or is there one that maybe doesn't necessarily fall in that range?
Well, safety is interesting, right? Because everyone loves Kyle Hamilton and Cine out of Georgia. But if you look at the way the NFL game is played, and Jamal Adams is a great example of this. Like, it was a very high draft pick, and then the Seahawks traded ones to get him. What is Jamal Adams doing for your football team right now? And in terms of making an impact, like he's a good player, don't get me wrong, but what he plays and the way the game is played have come very different things now.
Right.
So to me, I would absolutely focus on the offensive line and the wide receiver. Those two I feel really good you're going to get at. We all know this is not the greatest quarterback draft class of all. And next year's draft class is supposed to be much higher. So if I'm the Saints, and we know we have Jameis there and potentially for more than 1 year based on, like you said, his out in the contract, I would focus in on those other positions, specifically offensive lineman and wide receiver, and then we'll figure out the other things as we go along.
With you 100%. Trey, really appreciate you coming on the show. Trey Wingo over at Pro Football Network, of course, working with Caesars, of course, was the big sponsor, of course, where that final four tournament was held. And make sure you go and check out the podcast, both Draft Insiders with Tony Pauline and as well as Half Forgotten History. Trey, really appreciate you coming through and hope to see you again here soon.
Ross, you got it. And any friend of Allie Bronson's is a friend of mine. So good deal.
All right, y'all. One more big thank you to Trey Wingo at Wingo's. Spell it like Wing Oz, O-Z, on Twitter. We're going to be hearing from him, I'm sure, more throughout the offseason as well. What a fantastic, fantastic dude. So really good stuff there. And we'll continue to talk a little bit more about it. The Saints' interest in those positions, building around the quarterback as opposed to looking for their next quarterback, still makes a ton of sense to me. But there's another possibility for the New Orleans Saints in 2022's NFL draft that no one seems to be talking about in the first round. There's a chance that the Saints only pick once, but still end up with two players, if that makes sense. Might not. We'll talk about it, though. We'll break it down here as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Before we get to that, though, we're going to talk about our friends over at BetOnline, of course, the best and easiest place for you to place all of your sports bets, getting in on props, odds, lines, whole bunch of stuff that you can get on. It's your number one spot for all your betting needs and sports info. You can find all the latest sports developments, including this week's Masters Championship. Shout out to Tiger Woods, not playing golf, not competing in a golf championship or anything in over 500 days and coming in under par, shooting a 71, 1 under today. What an incredible, on Thursday, what an incredible performance. Oh, it's got me so hyped. Anyway, BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores as well. So go and check out their website today or use your mobile device so you can stay up to date on all the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, family, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget to go and check out that Locked On NFL YouTube page as well. 3 days live, 7 rounds, every bit of it covered over on the Locked On NFL YouTube page throughout the NFL draft. Very excited to be a part of the team. Head to Dallas to get that covered out of WFAA Studios. Going to be a ton of fun, so don't miss that. But also, don't miss any episodes of Locked On Saints either. I got to tell you, like, as we're getting closer and closer to the NFL draft, I don't know how many episodes you watch or that you listen to, but however many you watch or listen to, add one. Get another one in, because there's so much information coming out about the NFL draft right now. And some of it is like media driven. Some of it is like coming from camps and stuff like that. But honestly, like from a pure football perspective, this is maybe the most excited I've been about a New Orleans Saints draft, because they have so many options available to them with this recent move that they made, grabbing picks 16 and 19 in the first round. And there's an extra possibility here that I don't think anyone's really talking about. And we talk about opening up flexibility in the draft by having these two selections. And that's true within the draft, but it's true outside the draft as well. Imagine the New Orleans Saints only using or selecting at one of those two places, but still walking away with two players. What I mean by that is that the Saints could keep 16 and select, let's say, Trevor Penning, but then they could move, pick 19, not to move up in the draft, but they could go and get a proven veteran wide receiver like a DK Metcalf or a Tyler Lockett, or try to, right? Now, I know I'm shooting a little high when I mention those two receivers in particular, but hey, if you're trading at a first round pick, you might as well shoot high, right? When we're kind of like, coming up with ideas and all these other things. But, and it's not just the first round picks that they can trade, right? I mean, they could do that, but they could also now, because they have these two picks in the first round, find that they have more flexibility with their second, third, fourth round picks and because of that, they could move those picks for other wide receivers as well. So like, let's think about this. Let's say that the going price for a wide receiver tends to be around like a second round pick and a fifth round pick for a good wide receiver, right? We've seen a lot of receivers moved for, that particular package. So if we think about that and we consider that, you could basically say the Saints could leave the NFL draft with, let's say, Trevor Penning at 16. Let's say Jameson Williams at 19. And then they could trade their second round pick and their fifth round pick, let's say, for, I don't know, Darius Slayton, right? Tyler Lockett, right? And then you're leaving the NFL draft with Trevor Penning, with Jameson Williams, and Tyler Lockett, and Darius Slayton, right? Darius Slayton, maybe you don't have to do a second and fifth, you probably do like a third or something like that. But you know what I mean? You could walk away now with an extra wide receiver that's not even in this draft class, but because of the flexibility that you've given yourself in this year's draft, you also give yourself some flexibility in the trade market, right? So it just opens up more possibilities for the New Orleans Saints. And I'm just talking about trading for wide receivers. You could trade for an offensive lineman. You could trade for a safety. You could trade for a defensive tackle. There's so many different options that you might be able to now utilize because you have 2 first-round picks. So what you do with those day 3 picks, when their value is at their absolute highest, which is right now through the draft, you could dole those out. You could dish those out. You can bring back some proven veteran talent that eliminate the question marks that usually come with drafted players, particularly day 2, late day 2, day 3 players. So you can eliminate some of that concern, some of those question marks, some of the need for development by going out and getting guys that have already played in the NFL, because you could invest those 2 first-round picks, those top 3, those 3 top 50 picks that you have into top 50 talent, and then go and get yourself talent that's better than what you're going to find in the draft at that point, no matter what, because you're going out and you're getting somebody that's already done it at the NFL level. It's a pretty good situation to be in. Now, there's a downside to it, right? The New Orleans Saints are trying not to spend a lot of money anymore, right? It's one of the big things that they're doing, right? You've seen it. You've seen it in this year's free agency. And the idea here is you roll a little bit of this year's cap over, you roll a little bit of next year's cap over, you roll a little bit of 2024's cap over, and all of a sudden all those restructures and things like that, the money that they keep kind of like kicking down the road, they won't have to keep kicking down the road because they're actually paying it off by rolling over money from the previous season. It makes sense. You take a little bit of a hit in 2022, take a little bit of a hit in 23, take a little bit of a hit in 24, and then you're kind of out on the other side of it, 25, 26, while the salary cap is rising, and then bam, you're doling out contracts like the Kansas City Chiefs or whatever. And so I get it. It makes a lot of sense. But because of that, you lose. So because of that, what happens is that you want to cost control everything, right? So that's why investing in talent in the draft makes sense, because everything in the draft is cost controlled, right? Rookie scaled contracts, and maybe a 5th-year option here and there. So by going with my idea about, yes, investing early in some draft picks, but then also trading some of those later draft picks, you're losing a little bit of the cost control thing, because you're not getting a viable wide receiver on a 3rd-round contract or a 4th-round contract. You're getting a veteran wide receiver instead. But here's where you can kind of make all that work. If you can get a wide receiver that is on a rookie contract that has 1 year left or 2 years left on that rookie deal, and then you grab, let's say, Jameson Williams in the 1st round, you don't have to rush Jameson Williams onto the field in the 1st year. You can let him have kind of like half a year to get ready and then get acclimated and then get him back on, but you still improved your offense with your other 1st round pick, maybe even your other 2nd round pick, and then by trading to get this veteran wide receiver in that's talented, that can help you, that's better than the other wide receivers that you have behind Michael Thomas, and that is still cost controlled because they're on their own rookie deal. And then when it comes time to give them a new contract, you don't have to. You can let them go as a free agent and potentially return a compensatory pick for that, and then invest another pick in the wide receiver classes like Trey and I were just talking about that are only going to be impactful more and more and more year after year after year because of the synergy between playing this position in college versus playing this position in the NFL. It's the same now. So when I think about this idea of like the Saints have these 2 first-round picks and people want them to package them and pair them up and trade them and move up and go and grab them. No, there's no reason to do that. Maximize the flexibility. Maximize the versatility that you have. The Saints love versatility, like multiple. Like it on defense, like it on offense, like in their draft picks. This is their opportunity to be able to do that. Just more evidence to me that this move is smart. Now, they have to hit on the picks in order for it to be exactly what it needs to be. But here's just more evidence that it all makes sense. We also got more evidence Wednesday and Thursday about the New Orleans Saints still being a free agency destination. I got to talk to Taco Charlton, got to talk to JP Holtz, got to talk to Justin Evans. And there was something about all those conversations that just shows you how much NFL players love the New Orleans Saints, their system, their coaches, their organization. We're going to break all that down and give you a little bit more glimpse. We got some other things going on in Honey Badger Watch as well. So update you on that as we continue on to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints. But before we get to that, it is my absolute pleasure to tell you about the Honey Badger of protein bars, which is Built Bar, because they just do it different. They just are different. They're built different. They are fantastic. That's my correlation now in the NFL for Built Bars. They're the Honey Badger of Built Bars. And here's why, right? You're talking about a protein bar that gives you 17, 18 grams of protein, but tastes like a candy bar, despite the fact that it's only 4 or 5 grams of sugar, 4 or 5 net carbs. Compare that to your favorite candy bar, right? This tastes like a candy bar. Compare it to a candy bar, right? Your favorite peanut butter cup, your favorite nougaty candy bar, whatever it is that you like. Covered in chocolate, these are too, 100%. Covered in 100% chocolate. You're talking about, 300 calories? A ton of sugar? Dozens of net carbs? Not with these. And these come in the Built Puffs with the marshmallows, brownie batter. The brownie batter Built Bar, which is the best candy bar I've ever eaten, and because of that, it's the best protein bar I've ever eaten too. That protein bar is so good, it makes me mad. So go and try it for yourself. Get angry, get glad with me. I'm glangry. That's what I am. Over at Built.com, go and check them out. Use the promo code LOCK15, LOCKED15, that you can get 15% off of your next order. That is 15% off with the promo code LOCKED15 at built.com. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Saints with a quick conversation around more evidence that the New Orleans Saints are indeed still a free agent destination. I keep going back to that Yahoo article that came out a few weeks ago, or a few months ago now, a couple months ago, maybe a month ago. I don't know. Let's say a few weeks ago. That listed New Orleans Saints as the number 32 free agent destination in the NFL. The 32nd best place, a la the worst place for NFL free agents, because they were so far over the salary cap and they don't have a quarterback. Okay, well, now they have like the 5th most money to spend in the NFL. And they have their quarterback in Jameis Winston, and they have 2 first-round picks looking to build talent, put talent around Jameis Winston. And a very good defense. Really, really good defense, actually. So, when we get the opportunity, like I had Wednesday and Thursday, to talk to newly signed free agents like former first-round defensive end Taco Charlton, former second-round safety in 2017, Justin Evans, it kind of gives you an opportunity to ask a little bit about how did it all come together? What is it that made you choose the New Orleans Saints? And so one of the things that I asked Taco a little bit more specifically, Taco Charlton, the Saints' new defensive end, he was asked a bit about his role and the vision that they have for him. And, as a piece of the rotation and being able to be another pass rusher that could do a little bit of everything. He could stand up in a 2-point. He can go down in a 3-point stance. He can rush off the edge. He's had some trouble with injuries and things like that, catching on with other teams. But now he'd be in a rotation, kind of behind guys like Marcus Davenport and, of course, Cam Jordan, maybe even behind Carl Granderson to begin and stuff like that. So, he's in a comfortable place to be able to rotate and be able to contribute. And so when I asked, was working with Ryan Nielsen a part of the draw that brought you to New Orleans? Here was what he said to me.
No, I mean, it's a lot. I mean, as you look in the past and you see what the history they've been able to have, getting, good production out of their ends, as in, Cam, of course, been doing it for a lot of years. Then you have Hendrickson with the Bengals, who obviously when he was here, he was doing a lot of great things. So you see the production and everything that he's able to get out and get the best out of him. So I'm happy to be with a coach and a system that gets the best out of their defensive ends and lets them rush and lets them get out after the passing.
I think in particular, that last little piece, I'm happy to be with a coach and a system that gets the best out of their defensive ends and lets them get after the passer is my favorite part of that entire thing. And I think about why it is that New Orleans Saints are a draw. And it's because the thing that the New Orleans Saints have done really since Peyton, but I'm sure will continue to do after Sean Payton, because Pete Carmichael kind of carrying on the system, Dennis Allen being a part of that culture, is that they've always built their team to maximize and utilize the strengths of the players that are brought in. So it's not like there's a 53 binders back there to where, running back 2 gets brought onto the team and then they hand him a binder and say, okay, here are your responsibilities as running back 2. Here's how you now play the game, right? That's not what they've ever done. They've always sort of talked to those players and kind of figured out, okay, this is a player that, they can look at, they could see on tape. They can say, okay, those are talents that the team can utilize. So how does the team utilize that? Well, it might mean that the team needs to do a little bit more of this. And so they do. So they bring in Alvin Kamara and they say, he's really great in the ball in his hands in space. Let's throw the ball to him a little bit more. Boom. Then all of a sudden, Drew Brees became the player that threw passes behind the line of scrimmage more than any other quarterback in the NFL over a certain amount of time, targeting to running backs more than any other player in the NFL over a certain amount of time. That was that picked up after Alvin Kamara was drafted. So it's those types of things that I think make a lot of sense for players when they think about where can I go and do what makes me best. And you heard that from Taco Charlton. Same thing came from Justin Evans today when I asked him a little bit about his vision, the fact that he played a whole bunch of different roles with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, played in the box, played free safety, played in the slot, played at corner. And I asked him about his versatility, and here's what he had to say about that.
Man, I feel like I'm a type of safety that can, like you said, just play all around. I try to be as versatile as possible, from playing free safety, from covering receivers to covering tight ends to tackling in the box, playing like a little linebacker type. So I try to just always make my game as versatile as possible. So when I get put in situations in the game, I'll always be good. So, I mean, I think I can help out a lot just to get back in football shape and then just get it back going. I think I can help out a lot with any kind of whatever I need to do, whether that be special teams or down covering somebody or back playing the ball in the air, just any kind of way. I think I'm that guy for that.
And to follow up on that, Amy Just from Times-Picayune, New Orleans Advocate, asked as well, like, what do you feel about the New Orleans Saints and their utilization of kind of like positionless players in the secondary? And Justin Evans talked a little bit about, hey, if you're versatile on defense, it gives you an opportunity to hit the field, to get jobs, all that other stuff. So Justin Evans, despite the fact that he's kind of been away from football for a little while, he had those foot injuries and things like that kind of kept him away. He's coming into a system now that he feels like benefits him, and a system that maybe he doesn't have to be on the field for, 50, 60 plays a game, and instead is able to rotate and be a part of the depth, but also a part of the rotation and get on the field for New Orleans, playing the role that he plays best. Same thing came from J.P. Holtz as well when I asked him about what it is that he's going to do. He plays, he's played a ton of tight end, he's played a ton of fullback, he's played a ton on special teams, and he talked all about, him being utilized on special teams and, him being willing to do anything it is that the team asks him to do to win. Like, those are the types of things you hear about players that are playing on teams that they want to be with, right? So I just think that, the more and more that I hear these ideas that the Saints aren't a good free agent destination, I just kind of chuckle already. But now, like, as you're hearing from these free agents that they brought in, it's very, very clear, very, very clear that that's what the New Orleans Saints provide to these teams. Speaking of, in terms of potential free agent additions, Tyrann Mathieu, Honey Badger, lots of eyes on him. He did a virtual tour of the Philadelphia Eagles. So there is definitely some competition, as everyone would imagine, for Tyrann Mathieu for the New Orleans Saints. I don't think I'm going to kind of like stick my flag in the ground here and kind of like stake my claim. And I'm going to be dead wrong probably, but I don't think that Tyrann Mathieu signs anywhere until after the draft. At this point in free agency, you might as well wait, right? Because you could sign with a team right now, but then if there's a player at your position that gives them excellent value when they're up to select in the draft, you could have somebody sign right in front of you that's either breathing down your neck for a job that is already set to be your immediate replacement, or worse, even takes your job from you. I mean, think back to Adrian Peterson signing with the Saints in 2017, right before the Saints were in position to make a move, trade up, and grab Alvin Kamara. And then what happened? Adrian Peterson was traded by week 4 to the Arizona Cardinals. So I just think about why would you sign at this point, other than, trying to make sure that maybe a team doesn't draft a player, because you can fill the need before they go into the draft. But honestly, like, most NFL teams will still draft that player at that position if the value's right. So you might as well just wait until the draft is over and then make your decision. So I would say that if whichever one of these teams doesn't invest in safety in the draft might have the better chance of signing Tyrann Mathieu before all this is over. Now, I said that, now watch him sign with one of the two teams tomorrow. But I think that, Philly was a place that always made a ton of sense to be competition for the Saints when it came to Tyrann Mathieu. So not surprised to hear that there is some interest there, potentially mutual interest, but certainly interest from the Philadelphia Eagles. So big thing is Tyrann Mathieu is probably going to have to come down on his price tag at this point in the offseason too. So we'll see exactly how that all pans out, or if he's willing to take kind of a team-friendly 1-year deal and then try to hit the market again next year. But I can understand the hesitation of that if you're an NFL free agent at this point. So coming up on Monday, we're going to dive in. We'll have another mock draft. We're going to do a mock draft with trades this time, explore the Saints trading up with one of those 2 first-round picks, and then maybe a couple of other day 2, day 3 trades as well. I could see the Saints maybe jumping up in the second round. They've shown a lot of interest in some potential second-round quarterbacks, so something to watch there, and we'll explore that on Monday, as well as try to solve all the other positions as well before even really focusing on quarterback. So we got that coming up for you on Mock Draft Monday. And of course, everything else you need around your New Orleans Saints. Thank you so much, as always, for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you go and check out that Locked On NFL Draft podcast. They love drafting quarterbacks to the New Orleans Saints, but have a feeling that their upcoming Mock Draft Monday, they might go a different direction. So make sure you go and check that out. Ryan Tracy, Eric Crocker doing a fantastic job over at the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. As always, y'all, I appreciate you so much for making me a part of your day and a part of your routine. For everything else you need around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how your mom and them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.